Season 2 of the Hiring Librarians podcast. We talk about hiring, getting hired, and broader career issues for librarians, archivists, and other folks in information service professions. I'm your host, Emily Week. This podcast is part of my work on the site hiringlibrarians.com, where I've spent more than a decade asking questions, complex, stupid, and everywhere in between, to LIS workers on both sides of the hiring table. This episode was recorded on September 10th, 2025. My guest today is Christy Moran. Hello, podcast listeners. I'm here with Christy Moran, currently the manager of the Anythink Library's Huron branch in Thornton, Colorado, and most previously the Adult Library Services senior consultant at the Colorado State Library, which she refers to as a library for librarians and libraries throughout the state. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Emily.
Hi.
How are you? And everyone.
Yeah. and yeah, everyone is listening.
Competing for those Spotify bajillions of dollars, right? That Rogan gets and Mark Moran gets, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my 2-cent check to arrive. Christy, thanks so much for being here. In addition to the introduction I read, we were talking about before we started, Christy might have been my most interviewed job seeker. Christy took the Hiring Librarians Job Hunter Survey, probably, I think, back in 2013. And then we did follow-ups with her at 1 year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, and again, 10 years later. So we have a whole suite of 5 different interviews with Christy over the years. And I think it's really cool. Thank you so much for that and for being here. Maybe we'll get started, Christy, by talking about your career path, how you arrived in libraries, maybe a little bit about what you do now. The question I often ask folks is, did you always want to be a librarian?
The answer to that question is easy. It's no. I did not want to be a librarian always. My mom loves to say, my mom is like a regular library patron and user, has been our whole lives, and continues to be so. She sends me stuff all the time from her current, like for her local library system, which is the Miami-Dade County Public Library System. And she's like, have you ever heard of this? And I'm like, Mom, I kind of invented that. Like, there's a lot of that. So my mom credits herself for that. She says she's been priming me my whole life, but I know that that's not true. I, like many folks in libraries, got an English degree. I was originally a dual major in English and religious studies. Mostly, I did not want to be a teacher. That's all I didn't want to do. People find this hard to believe. I had like paralyzing stage fright. Like I could not speak in front of like 2 people, let alone 15 people, let alone 30 people, let alone the other day I presented to like over 75 people. Like that is just not the world that I was primed for. Throughout college, I took, retail. I worked in CD stores. CDs, for those of you who don't know this, are things that are like a tool, I guess, a flat disk object where we used to have music and then later data. So you used to be able to put a CD into a computer. I know that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
In any event, I worked at a CD store. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I landed in. I was the director of education in my early 20s. This is a lot of the West Kendall Learning Center location for a Sylvan Learning Centers, where I did everything for $36K a year. I was working like 60 to 70 hours a week.
Jeez.
I had over 30 staff reporting to me. I was daily looking at like labor budgets, like P&L. If there was toilet paper, I was ordering it. If there was testing to be done, I was doing it. If there was instructional plan management, I was doing it, So I was there when I decided to get my master's in library and information science. So I was in Florida. Florida has 2 ALA accredited MLS programs. The FSU, Florida State University, which is in Tallahassee, and the University of South Florida, which is in Tampa. Both of those are hours away from where I lived, which is in Miami. At that time, USF had something that the others didn't have, which was the ability to do an early version of like a hybrid program for online learning. Right? So I was on Blackboard. I was able to do a couple of classes in person, or
Uh-huh.
I was able to do a class that I just, reported to once or twice a semester in
Sure.
Tampa. I could do that.
Uh-huh.
So I wasn't even working in libraries when I finally got my master's. In fact, I had just been laid off of the Sylvan Learning Center's job.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah. And at the time when I got my master's. So I always say I'm like the luckiest girl in the world, not because good stuff happens to me, but because the best version of bad stuff happens to me. So serendipitously, I'm about to graduate with my master's and I get like laid off and pink slipped.
Yeah.
And that was like horrible. But I was finally able to say, okay. So I couldn't get a job for 3 months because I was on severance. I couldn't get unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
But 3 months is a semester.
Right.
And
Right.
it's actually the summer semester.
Uh-huh.
So rather than graduate May 2012, I was like, oh, I'll just graduate like August 2012 and I'll take that summer to see if anybody will allow me to do a fieldwork internship because that wasn't
Uh-huh.
something I was able to afford to do, right?
Sure. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So you
Yeah.
gave yourself a paid internship by getting
Essentially,
severance. Yeah.
Sylvan Learning Center paid me to do an internship
Uh-huh.
at Florida International University's reference department.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for a
Mm-hmm.
semester and then kind of, I don't know, you had asked about the career path and that was it. I didn't want to be a librarian
Yeah.
really. And then as I had this other job and I'm like, I just don't want to be a teacher,
Yeah.
and I don't want to stand in front of people.
Yeah.
Like,
I have a little bit of that, like getting to the librarianship by what you don't want to do. Like I did not want to be a social worker.
I love that for you, Emily.
But I wanted to help people, right?
Yeah.
Like I liked books and I wanted to help people and I didn't want to be a social worker, but I wanted to do something that would make a difference.
Yeah.
So
I feel
yeah.
that.
Oh, the other thing I was thinking about CDs. And when I was in library school, I graduated in 2011 from library school. Also this idea of like, oh, online learning, is this okay? Like, can you be a librarian having gone through online learning? Maybe you'll be a bad librarian because you won't know how to talk to people.
I'm a super bad librarian. So there might be some reasoning to that.
But when I was in library school, and it was a little late for this, but my library school collection development textbook said, you will be able to save room on your shelves by having plenty of CD-ROMs.
Ooh.
In 2000.
Little did they know. We don't even, like it's in the air now. Like the cloud.
Yeah.
We literally call it the cloud.
Yeah. So let's talk, I guess, a little bit about, so your two recent jobs, somehow you got from Florida to Colorado and you were working for the state library in Colorado, which I think is really interesting. And I haven't spoken to anybody. I know a little bit about state libraries, but I haven't spoken to anybody on the podcast who worked at a state library. And now you're with Anythink, which I was also telling you before we started. I remember in library school going, ooh, Anythink, they're so cool and progressive and like, oh, wow, they're doing so many interesting things. So I'm interested in both of those systems. Should we talk about state library stuff for a little while and then move on to
maybe maybe we should talk about the state library a little.
Yeah.
Again, luckiest girl in the world kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to get out of Florida. So I was in a joint use facility. I was a college faculty librarian at Broward College, and I was very happy with my job, but I also was not happy with the state. My husband is a public educator in the K-12 system. It's very clear that Florida was just not for us if I could get out of Florida.
Yeah.
We looked at where we had family, right? The idea of moving away was not something that was ever available to me. I thought I could not afford it, but COVID did many horrible things, and yet it offered some opportunities within that. And one of those was I could apply to work and interview without having to fly in and out of states, which I couldn't afford to do. And it allowed me to take risks or feel like I could. So I applied to the Colorado State Library. I didn't really understand what I was applying to, and I applied to it. And then I got the job, and I had just turned down another job that I had accepted not in libraries. So I had accepted a job as an instructional designer, which is a field of interest of mine and some expertise of mine. And I was like, I'm launching into that career. Upon reflection, couldn't do it, mostly because of the financial constraints of that position. So the next morning, I'm flying out to Colorado to visit my friends and family here. And the original goal of that was to find an apartment, but I had just turned down the job. So I was just about to tell my goddaughters the next day, in 10 hours, give them the bummer news. Not going to be living here.
Yeah.
It's 9 o'clock the night before we catch this flight. And I get a phone call from Lori Special, who at that time was the director of library development at the Colorado State Library. She says, I got this job. I just laugh. And she says, do you want to take it? And I said, I don't even want to hear anything about it. The answer is yes. And so she goes, so congratulations, you're going to be a consultant for the Colorado State Library. And I said, awesome. So what's my job exactly? No idea. I didn't know what a state library, was. And she said, she's kind of, I describe it as she was just kind of grasping for the words. Maybe she already knew them, but she said, so you're a librarian for students now, right? And I said, yeah. And the public who comes into your, the public library side? I said, yeah. And for faculty? I said, yeah. She goes, so this job is you're a librarian, but for librarians. Yeah. It just made sense. And so I've run with that, right? As I was trying to understand the job over the last 3 years, it was that. It was constantly, and it's all over, it's on my LinkedIn. And it's something that I really took to, right? Because it made sense. Even in a state where the state library is beloved, like Colorado, no one knows what it is I do or did, right? The second that I framed it as, well, I'm your librarian, everyone understood what that meant. Yeah. And in library development, that's really the case, right? So in many ways, it was providing professional development and learning. And other ways, it was building capacity for libraries all throughout the state in all service areas and types through bringing in partners from either local or state agencies or creating pathways to partnering with larger organizations like AARP. So that's really, I saw myself as, and I continue to see myself in many ways since then as a librarian for the people who work in libraries in all kinds of spaces and places throughout the state.
I am pretty familiar with the California State Library. I've done some work with them. And there's something that I always found confusing that I now don't find confusing, but I think we should clarify here. And the job title of consultant to me is always a little bit odd because it sounds like you're a consultant and you don't actually work for the state library. But the consultant to me there is referring to other libraries. The state library employs you to do consulting for libraries of the state.
Correct. Essentially, consultant or an advisor or sometimes a grant writing partner or some kind of thought partner for folks who work in libraries whatever state you're in. Just imagine right now, I think of West Custer Library, right? It's a small mountain town with a small mountain town's budget for public sector stuff. I can promise you that they cannot afford the cost of some of the consultants that I've met who are charging $15,000 to help them write a strategic plan. Moreover, do those consultants know what it's like to work with a town whose budget is really limited, who's also sharing that budget with other people, who, by the way, in what I've affectionately come to know as and call a mountain independent state. So it's very somewhat progressive in some areas, somewhat really conservative in other areas. How do you navigate coming up with a strategic goal? How do you do that for folks who maybe have a very different viewpoint on libraries than you do? And so I would imagine that it's almost like the Colorado State Library would be uniquely qualified as a result of we're everywhere going to these towns, right? I know that West Cliff is super different from Yuma, is super different from Fort Collins, is super different from Pueblo, where a consultant that's maybe a private consultant would charge a lot of money to not have that background information and to not have the kind of relationship that the Colorado State Library consultants would have.
Was there a sense of like, okay, in Colorado, we're interested in this initiative, and so this is what we're going to drive out? Or was it really more coming from the libraries?
There's a couple layers to that, right? Every state is going to be different.
Yeah.
The state library in Colorado is what I have called disproportionately funded by federal grant money. So that is the IMLS, so the Institute of Museum of Library Services, LSTA, so the Library Services Technology Act kind of funds, right? So the state itself provides a match to federal funds, but the bulk of the funding for the state library, like the vast bulk of that comes from the federal dollars. So why is that important? Because everyone who receives, right, IMLS or LSTA funding, and you write this like plan for 5 years.
Yes.
And you're pretty specific in that you're going to do these projects.
Yeah.
In the state of Colorado, adult library services consulting was a project. So I was a project. My entire like line of funding came from this like federal dollars. The person who determined what that would mean, what activities toward like meeting that project's goals are. And in fact, what those project goals are is like sitting in a podcast with you right now. So like, how would we spend that money really came down to me going, oh, how should we spend that money? Like, yeah, my salary is okay, but like, could and should and would I buy technology? Is that even allowable? Under the grant rules and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So what I did, because when I came in, there was a line to describe that project. So my job description, like what I was supposed to do for 5 years, was literally support adult library services and programming in the state. What does that mean?
Yeah. Oh, that's, yeah.
So to determine what that means is, to me, was hugely reliant on, well, what are the needs and aspirations of the folks who work in libraries assisting adults? So that kind of answers, it's like the two sides of that question, which is like, what does the state library determine or kind of set out to do? Well, it depends on what someone has written into this like 5-year plan. But what someone writes into this 5-year plan, at least for me, and I know for several people who work at the state libraries, really, what is it that people on the ground and in the field are asking for and need?
Yeah.
There are some things that are legislatively required, right? So every state's legislation for the state library is different. So, but none of it is like, you will ensure that libraries are connected to state agencies through partnership.
Right.
So that was me.
Yeah.
Right. Or, ensure that linguistic discrimination doesn't occur on a site-by-site basis by not having materials present, right? So we want to ensure access to libraries and materials and resources to all the residents, all the taxpayers, all the visitors, irrespective of languages.
I guess so sort of leads me to one final question. I just wondered if you had any overall thoughts about trends or challenges that you see that are statewide.
That's tough. I think that, so I'll go back to that description I gave of mountain independent, right? So this is a very home rule state. And it is a very varied state with diverse viewpoints, diverse library types, public library types. There's, municipal, there's county, and then there's library district in Colorado, which is somewhat unique, if not unique. And that could be a whole thing. And so the trends that I see and the trends that have been articulated are this like real chasm and this real distinction between how folks who work in public libraries, even in Colorado, and maybe even perhaps especially in Colorado, don't see or maybe have like these like blinders on when it comes to what a community different from theirs is going through. So, folks who live in Boulder, right? This is famously progressive, right? not a lot of cultural diversity or racial diversity, but very progressive, right? Very wealthy, are now a library district. Like what the folks there think maybe all libraries should be like. And maybe I don't disagree with them on a fundamental individual level. But then I know from visiting Burlington and Woodland Park and Pueblo and Walsenburg, I know that that's not going to happen in those places, right? And the people who live and work in those libraries trying to communicate to the folks who work in like the Denver public libraries. Like this is what we're going through.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with library boards and how people get situated and placed on them. How a town or a city that is being moved in either a conservative or progressive direction can, if given the opportunity, take over kind of a school board or a library board. And so the trend I see is that chasm that we see, that kind of divisive chasm in like social media and conversations, I also see in the field, right? Like where I see people just not listening to one another and not trusting one another and not having that humility and not having that moment of saying like, no, actually, you're right. I can't possibly know. I'm a genius. I'm brilliant. I know all these things. I have so much access to information and I still don't know what it's like to be in your shoes and your place. And I have to trust that you do and that you're going to do the best you can. How can I help you do what you need to do in your space? So the trend I hope for is the movement. And I'm hopeful that Colorado can be a kind of example of how that can work. I think there are really good people having those conversations now across these kind of different systems and different cultures, right? Because it is community culture and regional culture. And big picture, I mean, that's not about my career, but it's certainly about the future careers and the possibility of libraries and, you know, and how they'll be. So yeah, that's what I see as a trend. I see that divisiveness kind of coming down to libraries as a field. And I really, really, really hope, and I see the glimmers of hope and the sparks in that of actually, I'm going to listen to you. I know I'm brilliant. I know I have all this experience. I know I've got the fancy degree. And I also know that you're special and brilliant and you have all this experience too. So how can I work with and understand where you're from? You know, that's what I hope.
Like a cultural humility for libraries, for librarians.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. Yeah, cultural, intellectual humility, professional humility within the field would be. Hopefully it's emerging. I see it here emerging in small pockets. So I hope that it's a bigger trend.
So I would like to move on to talk a little bit about what it's like to work for anything.
Oh, sure.
And I was saying, like, to me, it was famous, but for you,
it was not.
It wasn't famous.
That's so funny. I tell this story often. I told people who work at Anythink know this too. So to just pull back a little bit, I mentioned that I had family here. Like my sister, non-DNA is what I call her, lives here literally in the same city that I live in, Thornton, which is now where I work. Years ago, man, like she must have moved out here like over 10 years ago at this point. No, for sure, over 10 years ago at this point. Whenever she first moved out here, I'm visiting, she's new to this town. And she's like, I want to take you to the library. And I said, I literally am on vacation. The last thing I want to do is visit a library. And I tell people she non-consensually brought me to an Anythink library because she happened to live here and Anythink is the public library of this area, right? It used to be the county library and then it became a library district. So I don't want to get into all that. I didn't know that at the time. So she takes me to Anythink. She takes me to the Wright Farms location. Okay. Things to know. I am not a library space geek. I don't particularly care. I've been in tons of libraries, even at that time. They all kind of are the same. I don't, at that time, consider myself to be like particularly library savvy. Again, it was my like vacation. I walked into the, lobby, the foyer of the Wright Farms building. I made it into like just past what we call a perch, right? So what would in a normal library, maybe where like an information desk would be. And my tears welled up, like my eyes welled up with tears. And I said, if I could design a library, this is what I would design.
Huh. Uh-huh.
It is, bookstore model, browsable shelves.
Uh-huh.
I've come to learn that the furniture is not library furniture, which I knew like implicitly, like I felt it, right?
Uh-huh.
There's like this, and coming from me, this usually would not sound like a compliment, but there's this like kind of retail feel to it without the capitalistic kind of like transactional expectation. It is bright. The ceilings are high, and that's in all of the buildings. There isn't a desk that's low, right? There's like what is a perch. There's a lot of what is like the roving philosophy. So much of what I wish libraries were like, I felt walking into that building as a person who did not want to be in a library, who was fully just going in as a patron, as a visitor. I didn't know what anything was. I looked at the sign and it felt very branded. It felt very corporatist. Those are things that I reject kind of outright. And, I've come to learn that it is very branded. It's not very corporatist. We are innovative. Innovation is it. Like, and it's not just like innovation in terms of like, what we typically think of like technological innovation, right? Like technological advancements and cutting edge. To me, cutting edge in a library is browsable shelves, right? A browsable collection, nice looking books, not holding on to things as an archive, unless you are an archive, right? And there's space for that and a need for that. But what is the general reader? What is the community? Very responsive to the community, right? That to me is core of what I want to see in libraries. And that's something that I see Anything doing. Come to find, years later, I moved to Colorado and I'm in the Colorado State Library, and Anything kind of pushes themselves or kind of stands apart from libraries, and I don't understand why. And then I am told and am taught about what Anything has done. Anyone can look this up. I certainly am not like the Anything historian, but Anything, I mean, Emily knows about Anything, right? Like folks around the country tell me all the time, like, oh my God, you work at Anything. That's like amazing. I like totally did not anticipate that would be a thing. And yet, I mean, I tell you, you and I were talking about my career path, big picture, but my career path from the state library to Anything is its own, 2 hours long, 6-month long journey.
Yeah.
And it is serendipitous, to say the least, that I end up working. I didn't have to move. I'm working in my neighborhood library.
Yeah.
It's like so bizarre.
Maybe talk a little bit about your job search. So you moving from the state to Anything, what was that like?
Yeah. It's like hilarious to me that because of my job at the state library, I've become like a somewhat visible person, which is so uncomfortable for me. And, like people quote me and stuff. People recognize me. It's so, and I say all of that because, the start of the year, I mentioned like the federal funding, right? The start of the year for the state library, for workers in the state library, was terrifying.
Yes.
Because of the threats to the very institution of the that is the funding of the state library, right? The IMLS.
Yeah.
So I know that I cannot be without health insurance. So I started looking for work. And so many jobs started opening up for like adult services, program manager or supervisor, like new positions too. I'd like to think I've done a really good job of making people understand the need for adult services as a specialty. And I got to see that in action, right? Like the result of that. And so I was just like, I applied to those jobs, jobs that I feel like people were even telling me to apply to. You are uniquely qualified for this job. Oh, and I'm like visible and I know. So I was applying to library systems that I knew. I checked right before we started our conversation. Between January 1st, literally January 1st and June 8th, I applied to 20 jobs, only 2 non-library. So 2 were at a community college in the kind of like student support, student services side. Everything else was a job I could absolutely do, or a job that when you read the job description, you would be like, did Christy help write this? And I mean, I could send them to you. And I think that people would agree who know my work and reputation here. Of those, I only was offered interviews for 9, and I only got official rejections from 4.
Wow.
Those official rejections came from library directors who I knew by name, who I have like friendships with, who were telling me how amazing I am, how I'm going to blow up library, land, and everything I do is so important and I can't leave the field and I'm a unicorn and I'm amazing. And all of those rejections, or the ones that didn't come, right? Like, so the I see that the position has already been hired.
Yeah.
All that comes in a really short amount of time, back to back. And it's really hard to get rejected outright by people who know your quality, who know your reputation, who have consulted with you, who literally right after rejecting you on the phone, send you an email and or tell you during that rejection that they're going to send you an email because they want you to consult with the person that they've hired in your stead.
Yeah. Okay.
That, all of them went to internal candidates. That is my understanding. But then the others that I, didn't, hear back from, that I don't know who got those jobs. I don't know if they're internal candidates. So it was a really hard 6 months, like a really hard 6 months, plus constantly feeling like I was going to lose my job at the state library any day now. Like June 30th is when state fiscal year ends. September 30th is when the federal fiscal year ends. And I was like dancing between both of those. So the job search was really hard. And the rejections were really hard. And it almost feels like I'd rather have not heard back, or maybe just like I'd rather have that from a bunch of people that I don't know. Like none of the people who interviewed me will tell you that I'm a bad librarian, or that I'm not like an excellent professional, or that my CV isn't, or my resume isn't like outstanding, that I don't present well, that I'm, like none of those people would. And that's really, I think, really hard in a way that it wasn't when I was interviewing, when we first started this relationship of like interviewee, interviewer. Back in 2013, 2012, like it's a totally different Christy, and I like professionally too. Like I have a website and stuff, and people recognize me when I walk into a building. People at PLA recognized me. Like from where? Why? And now, it's just a different world. Yeah. And I have to tell you, it's funny because it's anything. And I just mentioned PLA. So I went to PLA and I'm talking with the executive director during their happy hour that they have like, no, Christy, you should come. You're an unofficial anythinker. You're one of us. And it's all staff. And here I'm talking about like my feelings about the latest Roadhouse movie starring Jake Gyllenhaal. So like these people like know me really well on all these like levels, and they just happen to be looking for a branch manager. And someone sent it to me and said, could you please be my boss? And I was like heartbroken over all of these rejections that I've gotten, that I knew I wasn't going to get that gig, man. I like totally knew it. And I was just like, all right, fine. I'll just apply. I don't want to be a manager of staff anymore. Like I already had that, but I need a job, but I don't think anything will hire me. Like, why do they need me? I'm just down the street. And they hired me. Like it's so bizarre. I was ready to move to like the other side of the mountains and live in a friend's like living room while my husband tried to figure out like how to sell our house.
Gosh.
It's just and to be as welcome as I have been, it's just wild. But it goes back to something I said, when we were looking at the the old, answers that I put in, like, why, what advice do you have for job hunters? Like sometimes it's just, you just happen to be the person that knows the person. Sometimes even if you are that person, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a strange situation to have been in.
But before we started recording, you were talking a little bit about dating as a metaphor for hiring, which I think is very apt in terms of the amount of rejections that you can get and how deep that they can feel and cut. And also the thing that sometimes I think makes relationship finding actually work is like once you give up and say like, okay, I'm fine by myself. I don't need a relationship. That's when the relationship comes. So that kind of sounds like your anything story.
That's true. I didn't even put that together.
Yeah.
I didn't even put that together, but you're right. I was positive I wasn't getting that gig, the gig that I occupy now. Right. Yeah. I'm like in the third month of that. It's interesting. One of my staff members told me, like, so it was about a month into it, and she goes, so just so you know, before you got here, one of the librarians had told me who you were, like how she knew who you were and how we were really lucky to have you. And I was like, oh my God, like that's embarrassing. That's not true. I'm just like I hope to keep the lights on and to make sure you get paid. And she goes, the way that I've come to think of you is you're my favorite librarian's favorite librarian. And I could have started to cry, right? Like, because after all of that rejection, that dating rejection, right? If we're going to use that metaphor, to find out like secretly, like this whole time, like you ended up with someone who already loved you. Like is really, it really feels like, after all that, like, was it worth it? No, actually, I think I should have gotten the first job that rejected me, that I was the second to last candidate for, that they gave me all these reasons why I didn't get the gig. Am I glad that I didn't get it? No, I wasn't in January. And I would have been happy and amazing there. But to end up somewhere where you feel really welcome and loved and cared for, even by the staff that reports to you, right? That is a kind of gift, I think, in its own way. Because I don't start off in an antagonistic. No, I'm already kind of trusted.
There's a couple of things that you're making me think of. The first is I interviewed Angela Pasha recently. She's a coach for leadership, library leadership people, and she talks about supporting leaders coming in and what do library leaders need when you onboard them. And one of the things she says is support. Like, how do you talk about the leader to the people that they're going to lead or to the people that they're going to be colleagues with? And that's very...
I love that. I am fully aware of the privilege that I have to have had a job that made me so visible and that let me be myself. Like, so I often say that the state library didn't know what they bought when they bought Christie, right? Like they didn't. They took a gander and they were like, okay, it looks like it works. And then they like bought it. And that's what they got. What they ended up getting was me in my full like power, right? Anything knows exactly what they bought. Like there is not a version of a person who works at anything, especially in the administrative offices, who does not know every single element of the Christie package. I mean, they even know how I feel about Keanu Reeves. Like they know how I feel about naloxone in libraries.
It's
and
gonna be
know
pro,
how I feel
right?
About
You're pro Keanu, right?
Pro Keanu,
otherwise
right,
off
pro
the
Keanu.
podcast.
Yeah. We are a pro Keanu household, and that's just how we're just going to be. But like everybody knew that like punk rock Sesame Street is my vibe. Like I'm coming in, and everybody loves all of our neighbors, including Oscar the Grouch, legitimate member of Sesame Street. Something I say in the back room all the time. Right. Ben is our neighbor who lives outside. Right. Like that's it. Everybody knows how I feel about cross-sector partnerships, about being responsive to community, about my feelings about, meeting the needs of communities based on who lives in your community, using population and data and demographics data and stats. Like they knew that I was going to walk in with like, the director of AARP Colorado's Livable and Diverse Communities, like hanging out on Fridays, right? Like they knew that. And the support and the welcome, like, I don't know, maybe that worked against me in other job interviews, right? Where they were just like, oh man, the naloxone ferry of Colorado libraries is coming to our library. We are not ready for that.
Yeah.
This library did. Mind you, we don't have naloxone at this library. So it's just that kind of, so it's interesting.
Right.
I don't know, to feel the support.
Yeah, you were saying, which it's also known as Narcan. You were saying,
correct. So naloxone is the drug name.
Yeah,
Narcan is like or I guess like the generic name is how we would think if it was a different whatever. So Narcan would be like the brand name.
It took me a minute to be like, wait, what is she talking about?
Oh, I know. It's just like knowing the work that I did at the statewide level on like the things that I care about, right? And folks bought the whole package.
Yeah. I think it's such a really interesting thing that you're saying about them knowing sort of the fullness of you and also accepting the fullness of you. I think about sometimes the idea of like who is your professional self, who is your full self, like how do they meet? And I wonder how much of what you're talking about is you sort of growing up and being able to be your full self and being like, this is who I am, this is what I want to be, and sort of exploring more of the state library, and how much.
Interesting. So it's interesting because I think that this is everybody is different. And I think that this is a pretty core personality concept or persona, or not persona even, because it's like a real identity. And that's just my frustration and by frustration, I mean like kind of intellectual and like capacity frustration. I cannot actually be anything other than myself. And I think that I learned in Broward College from some incredibly supportive, now friends, former colleagues, who didn't want me to hide myself, who thought that being kind of funny and quirky and really smart and being really assertive, but also being really humble and vulnerable, like all of those kind of sometimes competing characteristics, like I would always try to, I just didn't, and I still do. I have like a lot of doubt and self-doubt about like, am I showing myself too much? Am I showing up as myself too much? And I think I tried early in my career in libraries to like not be fully myself when I was also in a professional space. And then I recognized, because of my former colleagues, like Joaquin Steiner, you find her, she's amazing, who would be like, no, Chrissy, you have to be your full self. Like that's what works. And then I just carried that into, all right, like I got permission. So I'm just going to do it. I'm going to roll that way. I don't think that works for everyone. I don't think that that's how everyone should work. I think people need to be safe and feel psychologically safe. And sometimes that vulnerability is too much. And to be fair, I occupy a lot of spaces of privilege, right? That I need to not hold other people to live up to or live parallel to or reflect that kind of same. So in terms of leadership, I like to project my full self because I want people to be authentic with me and to trust me and to trust that they can give me criticism that I'll take and that I'll do something with. But man, I also know that it will bite you because it has bitten me. Yeah. Right. And I mean, that's a risk, cost benefit analysis, right? That's like a risk I'm willing to take, but I don't know that it's served me well every time. I promise you, one of the jobs that I didn't get when they interviewed me, one of the questions I always ask is, well, you know me, right? So what brings me into this room? You chose to interview me. You follow me on LinkedIn. You have asked me to come to your library to train staff. So why am I here? And someone said to me, you might not like to hear this, but to us, you're a disruptor. And I think that we want that. I didn't get that job. So is it because I'm a disruptor that I didn't get that job? It's what brought me into that room. Right. Yeah. But maybe it's also what walked me out. Yeah. What closed the door.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I recently taught a class for core for people that are looking for work. And we were talking about sort of red flags and green flags when you go into a room to decide if, like, is this a place I want to work for? And one of the people said that they, when they went in, received a packet with their name on it with all of the information about the library they were interviewing at. And it was their preferred name, not their birth name. And we were talking about that as just a really simple symbol of, does the library
Sure.
see you as a person? Does the library accept who you are as a person? And that
Sure.
being such a key green flag for many people in looking for work. I also was thinking while you were talking about when I was in library school, there was sort of this push, like, because the internet was newer, you were supposed to have your online brand. Like, you were supposed to brand yourself as a librarian, and that's what was going to be how you got jobs. And which I was like, that sounds terrible. I don't want to brand myself. No, thank you.
I know.
And so I myself have been coming into this idea of, like, you know what, let's be more me at work. Let's worry less about, like, well, what do I look like online, and more about how am I being present for the things that I care about. And I don't know if it's that just because that's for me, it feels like something in the field, right? It feels like something people are interested more in, like, and maybe it's a COVID thing, or maybe it's like the vocational article that Fabazia Tar wrote was, I think, very groundbreaking in the field, but just this idea of, you are a person as well as a librarian. You have needs, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because if you have any awareness of me as a professional, you know that I'm a librarian, right? But I actually resist the idea that librarian is my identity.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's just a job. Like, that's a reality. When I was looking for work, people were really bummed for me. And I would say things like, dude, if I'm out of a job, I'm going to be like the best, like, cashier at the grocery store. Like, my identity is not librarian. My job is librarian. My vocation may be librarian.
Yeah.
But so what? And what does that even mean? Right.
Yeah.
I wonder, there is something that I think, and I think maybe generational. And I just mean, like, COVID could be a part of it. Like, generation to me means a lot of things. I accept that when I show up as me, I'm not going to be liked by a lot of people, like, period. And that I'm not going to be professionally respected by a lot of people. And I have to say that's also okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. I have to accept that, right? It sucks. Emotionally, it may take a toll, but walking in knowing that like, I have been listening to Devo since I was 6 years old, right? Like, I'm a kid who's getting kicked in the face at a mosh pit, right? I've walked into the wrong concert. I've never worn the cool clothes. I didn't have the money. I didn't get most of the jobs I applied to, which means that I know, and I don't want to be friends with everyone. Not everyone wants to be friends with me. That's okay. And I think when we start showing up to work as ourselves and showing up to interviews as ourselves, we also have to kind of take away that actually this may not be for them because I'm not for them. And that's okay. But that doesn't change who I am at my core or how I show up. I'm not suddenly going to show up and be like, you know what, guys? Like, actually, we should only have English books and everyone should be reading all the time. And no, you cannot use our building if you don't have a library card. I will never do that. It's just not going to happen. And that's okay. And it's also okay for somebody to look at me and be like, actually, I don't want to date you. You are not the right one for this gig. I'm not going to dox, like, a bunch of people who didn't hire me because it's legit, like, it's legit. I wouldn't hire everybody who walked in my door either. Right. Like, straight up. And so when we show up as our full selves, a big part of being vulnerable is being willing to accept rejection. And then what that takes. I told you before we started, like, how really hard it was, like, really hard. Like, it was hard to be rejected by people that knew you.
Do you have advice for job hunters about rejection and, like, handling it?
You wouldn't date everybody who wants to date you. You wouldn't. And you shouldn't. You're better than that, right? And in that way, we have to accept, you have to accept, I have to accept that sometimes the job didn't come to you and the job or the people didn't respond to you in that way for any number of reasons, but that doesn't mean that you're not worth it and you're not valuable and you're not special.
Mm-hmm.
And also, just because you think you're amazing doesn't mean that you're the best and are amazing. And sometimes there are things that you need to work on. You
Right.
thought your resume was awesome. Your experience was awesome.
Uh-huh.
Dude, I'm an amazing librarian. I'm visible and I'm known. If I didn't get the gig, it doesn't mean I'm not great, but there are things that I need to work on. My advice is to occupy those complicated, messy spaces
Yeah.
as a complicated, messy person.
Yeah.
A person who is both a professional person and a person independent of an occupation.
Mm-hmm.
And then have time and space for yourself where you can feel value and worth outside of your job and profession.
Yeah.
I need a job more than a lot of people need a job.
Mm-hmm.
I need healthcare, period. That is not an option for me.
Mm-hmm.
I do not come from generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I come from like deficit of that, right? Like I talk about this all the time. I have filed for food stamps.
Yeah.
I am a kid who knows what it's like to eat eggs, ketchup, and rice for dinner on more than one occasion, and not because that's what I wanted, right?
And when eggs were cheap before.
Right. When eggs were cheap, like maybe now, like would my mom even be able to get me eggs? Like I don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
So we need our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
But our jobs are not our worth. And maybe like, late stage capitalism, et cetera, we can get into all that. But there has to be a space where we both accept that actually there are things that we need to work on, right? Like actually I'm not perfect, spoiler.
Uh-huh.
I'm not even good at some stuff, amazing. But also that not every rejection is about you and your value, right? So you have to be able to assert that outside of the field and outside of the space. And I wish, and I go back to that question of like, did I always want to be a librarian?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people who have identified themselves even before becoming a librarian, even as children with the field. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe we need to start breaking up with that. Plenty of people wanted to be astronauts when they were little, right?
Right. Yeah.
But they don't like suffer daily indignities and like personal like shortcomings and failures and depression. They don't have suicidality because they weren't astronauts in the end, right?
Yeah.
And so we need to, I don't know, also accept that sometimes you can be the best, like, I don't know, like PE teacher, right? Or the best stay-at-home mom, or the best auto mechanic, or the best guy who works the floor only on some days at the bookstore down the street. Like that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah. This feels like a really good wrap up to me, but also I want to ask you, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Is there anything that you were like, oh man, I hope we get to this and we didn't get to it? Like we have a whole section of like your quotes from your old Hiring Librarians interviews, but also like if there's anything where you're like, I'm reading this really good book, it has nothing to do with libraries, but I'd like to share it. There's also space for that.
I think that a lot of us, whether we see it or not, I'm sure this happens in other fields. I'm positive it does because I've talked to people in other fields too. Mm-hmm. But definitely in libraries, we get really in the weeds of where we are, the way that we think things should be based on our experience in our institutions, the way we think libraries are generally, like we generalize based on our own experience. Mm-hmm. We also look around and we're like, things could be better here in my place. And then you go to another place and you find out what it's like and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe it's so good where I'm at.
Right. Yeah.
Or the opposite. Mm-hmm. So my one bit of advice, and I think this is for anyone in our field, because I don't think all of the people listening are looking for work.
No.
And I think that one of the things that our field, that our people, that our colleagues, that our friends should do is be outside of their systems and their jobs. Like literally, like talk to people, show up, network, ask people what it's like. When I would do regional workshops that invited folks from different libraries together just for learning opportunities, right? Because they all just happen to be in that area of the state. Mm-hmm. Consistently, what I would find was that the evaluations of people's feedback was that, yeah, Chrissy, your content is amazing. You're brilliant. You're so energetic. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The most valuable thing, though, was when I got to talk to somebody from a different library system and I got to pick their brain.
Yeah.
Dania in High Plains Library District at the Link Library does a Spice of the Month take and make. Because I know that, my library now will be doing it. I am allowing myself, right, to make mulled wine and hot spice cider take and makes. But that's because I sat down with Dania and was like, tell me everything. And she did. And she told me all these things. And I heard one thing and I'm like, dude, why not me? But it's because I heard her doing that. And so I think, yeah, it's great that we follow all of these other, we're on social and we follow all these listservs, and that's wonderful. And have you sat down with like 3 people from different like library systems and just asked them what their day is like? Because I got to tell you, some of it's really similar and some of it's really different. But it can't be better for you and it can't be better for them if you don't know what to dream, right? And if you can't see it, you don't know you can dream it. And if you don't know you can dream it, you defo don't know you can be it. And so my biggest thing, it's not about hiring librarians or job seeking as a librarian, getting into the field. It's literally looking at the other gardens around and going, what are you growing there? And how'd you get that there? And how come my version of that plant is like dying in my field, but yours is like flourishing? What are you doing? And what's that like? That curiosity, real, genuine curiosity, can make you feel better, but it could also give you room to know that you can do or have better. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
That is a good message to end on.
Yeah. I'm glad.
Yeah. All right. Oh, and just on time too. We were going to go to 12:30 and it's 12:29.
No one has ever accused me of ending on time.
Thank you for listening, and thank you to my guest, Christy Moran. And now, the fine print. One more plug for my Hiring Basics training. You can find a link to register by going to hiringlibrarians.com/classes. If you'd like to support this podcast and my work on hiringlibrarians.com, you can find my PayPal by visiting the site, or you can go to patreon.com/hiringlibrarians. I'd also love to hear from you about any little thing at all. You can email me at hiringlibrarians@gmail.com. The theme tune was written and performed by Matthew Travers. Thanks, Matthew.